So I've done many videos on Donald Trump's lineage, how, his he's royalty, like, all over the world. Europe. I mean, well, just everywhere. Denmark, Norway, he's related to at least every native Icelander in some small way. Bloodline. King of Scotland, going back to James, he goes back to James the Sixth. Okay, so I think it also goes. I think the lineage will likely go to, King Robert the Bruce, right? Robert, am I saying that? Robert the Bruce. He was the King of Scotland. He fought for the independence of Scotland. And given that Donald Trump is, royalty in Norway, Denmark, Iceland, Scotland, England, it may not be a direct, and this is the reason it's important. Because of who Robert the Bruce is a direct descendant of. Well, his maternal lineage. While Robert the Bruce is not a direct descendant of the biblical King David, his maternal lineage connects him to King David I of Scotland, who was a descendant of the biblical King David. This connection is significant as it highlights the enduring legacy of the biblical King David's lineage in Scottish history and royalty. So the reason King David is so important is because he was a man after God's heart. He was one of the true kings that was patient and relied on God. He didn't, go forging ahead in pride to kill his enemies. He was humble. Now, I know many people would say Donald Trump isn't humble when he's on stage. I think a lot of what you see, I don't think that I've never thought personally that behind closed doors, I think there's a business Donald and there's a other Donald. I do. Because everybody talks about what a kind heart he is. I mean, except the haters, but then they don't, look at, most of them have been, to the Diddy parties or Epstein's Island. But, normal people, let's say what a kind person he is. So I think that he has the one face for business and getting stuff done, and he wants it done properly, and it's that showman you see on stage. It doesn't mean he's being someone phony. It's just I think people just see the surface and they don't look deeper. So that's really significant because before Sermon on the Mount was King David. Not saying that King David was more important than Jesus or anything like that, but he was somebody that with so little people in the Old Testament that were after God's own heart, David was. He was a great king. So to be from that lineage would be huge. And here's the other reason I say this. 2017, Donald Trump's son opens King Robert the Bruce golf course. This is the golf course called Turnberry, I believe. And there's a history with Robert the Bruce, who, him and a woman, he was married twice, I believe, if it's the right Bruce. But one was because the woman held him captive. I think it was at Turnberry, I believe. I'm just going off the cuff here. So that's sort of significant. So, and Eric Trump has been in charge of that, because this was at a time when Donald Trump had stepped back from all the business stuff. And, because obviously he was in office. And, but he had made a comment about, let's make Turnberry great again. A lot like Robert the Bruce. He was loved because he was all about the independence of Scotland. As it says here, Robert the Bruce was the great champion of Scottish independence. He waged a long and uncertain war against Edward I, perhaps the greatest king of England, who almost succeeded in making Scotland a fief of England. Then independence of Scotland and the title of Bruce to the throne were firmly established by the crushing defeat of Edward II at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, the great place of Robert the Bruce in Scottish history. Yeah, there's so much you can read about him. So it's his maternal line then that goes back to the biblical King David. And I've said this before, Donald Trump, this is his genealogy, just, part of it. He goes back to, he's considered the son of Norway. No big deal or anything. But goes back to King Haakon V. And, of course, he also is, in Scotland. He goes, I know it's probably hard to see, but goes, where you see the crowns is, so King James VI of Scotland, who also went on, King James VI of Scotland was also the first king of England. So that's your King James version of the Bible, too. Yeah, I think I've been trying to read up on King James I of England, because I think that, like I've said before, that although King James wasn't happy with the Geneva Bible, he didn't change anything he just updated it. And the King James version is what actually was used to spread the message the most, is that version. Because it was easier to understand. I'm reading up on all that right now. But so although he wasn't really thrilled with the Geneva Bible, because they said that all kings were bad, and again, that's wrong. Not all kings in the Bible were bad. King David definitely was loved by God. This is the King David that went up against Goliath. He had so much faith that he could beat Goliath, and he did, because he put full faith and trust in God. He had all the qualities that God wanted, that God was always seeking. It is wrong to say in any Bible, I mean, if you're dealing with the biblical God, that all kings are tyrants, because they're not. Many were, but you can't say all of them, because God loved King David. He was a man after his own heart. That's what it says in the Bible. So whether the left likes it or not, they're not going to be able to beat him. No, because I'm telling you, the link goes to King Robert the Bruce, which means then he even has a line, maybe not directly, but is in the line of royalty to King David, to the biblical King David. But I mean, that's not because he's looking to be a king here, but that's likely why you hear the left saying that's what he would do, because they probably know and they just don't want to tell you. But they've already done the genealogy that he goes back to the first King James, or King James the First in England, but he goes back to King James the Sixth, which was the same. He was the sixth king of Scotland, but he was also the first king of England. So he was the one that had the authorized version made of King James, and also the Apocrypha. He authorized that too. That's what I'm reading about right now, is the authorized version of the Apocrypha. That's, all of it. I'm just reading, trying to understand it, like trying to look at it through the king's eyes. Because I don't think anybody was really wrong or right in it necessarily. I think maybe the king definitely had some ego and believed this, that, he maybe was trying to do the right thing. I don't think he was ever out to get the pilgrims. I also, though, do believe that God wanted biblical maturity, and the pilgrims were showing that, and that's why God helped them come here. So both can be good and, not necessarily wicked, if you know what I mean. But they're not going to be able to stop Donald Trump. You can't stop anybody that the hand of God is protecting.